Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Rotary Club of Gainesville here at the Cade Museum on this Tuesday, May 23rd. I'm Tom Collette, your Sergeant at Arms. Please silence your cell phones. Guests and visiting Rotarians joining us virtually on Zoom today, please identify yourself in chat. And if you're watching this after the fact on YouTube, register your participation, send us an email, info@rotarygainesville.org. Pete is not here again this week, so you've got stuck with me. I do have to share a report from just across the water over at First Magnitude. Seems like the health inspectors were there recently. That there was a report there were frogs in the brewery. So the health inspectors came back, did a thorough inspection, and went to the owners of First Magnitude and said, well, we can't seem to find the frogs, but we know they're there. We smell the hops. You want Pete back? Okay. At least Jason liked it. He's smiling. We're going to sing My Country 'Tis of Thee. Are you ready? My country 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring. Now let's join together and pledge allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now, folks, please remain standing for our invocation today, offered by Lori Vidal.
Yeah, now I'm thinking that's about a 7 on that joke. I think that's better than the Pete Inwall average, so that's good. Pete is in the process of moving into a new home, so he said, "Pray for my wife." so it is good to laugh. I do have to share kind of a heavier thing. I think many of you know Martin Dickinson, who's been a member of this club for many, many years. Martin is a longtime member, lovely wife, Lana. And Martin's fighting cancer, liver cancer, and it's pretty serious. So just remember Alana and Martin as they go through this period. He is at UF Health Cancer Center right now, hopefully maybe going home today. So we'll see how that works out. So just keep Martin in your prayers, and Lana, she's a delight. And so anyway, let's pray together. For many of us today, we're sitting on the edge of our seats as we anticipate our time together to do a checkup as to whether or not we are aging successfully. We're so thankful for all the blessings you have showered upon us. And we want to be good stewards of these blessings in our lives and with our lives. And as we gather with the intent to build goodwill and better friendships that are beneficial to all concerned, based upon the things in life we deem to be true, we're not done with life. And we gather again today to continue to make an impact in our community. Supply us with the want to ensure we can continue to be impact people as we individually evaluate the way we live. Are we aging successfully? Healthy reflection is such a worthy endeavor, and we gather today to do just that. I pray in your name, amen.
Thank you, Lori, for that vote of confidence. If you're visiting us today, please remain standing. If you're one of our members who has a guest, remain standing with them. Jason Shank is back with the microphone. He'll bring that to you to introduce your guest.
Thank you, Jason. Good afternoon, everyone. Today, my guest, again, is Judy Banks. She came recently. Many of you know her because your children probably saw her as a pediatrician. So welcome, Judy.
Ed Ellett, and I'm pleased to have as my guest today my wife, Marcia.
Kevin Amati, and I am happy to say that I've been red badged. And so yes, it's been 15 years since I've been red badged, but looking forward to the orientation. And I have a guest, Andrew Davey, who's our Chief Financial Officer over at Oak Hammock at the university. So please welcome him.
Welcome to all. We have just one announcement. I believe Greg is going to make that announcement. At least I don't have a name associated with the announcement. Brendan, come on up. It just has a blank space.
See how much you're loved. I'm happy to fill a blank space, I guess, on the agenda. Real quick, everybody knows this hopefully by now that we're ending our drive for Helping Hands. The truck out front is mostly full already with great donations by you all. Thank you for that. I keep getting asked, you want to silence that for me, Tom? I keep getting asked if this is the last day, am I too late? No, I mean, some of you know that I take it every day that we have any function at all, as a matter of fact. But I do have a good announcement real quick here, is that if you remember about 3 weeks ago, I brought a guest named Nash. He stood in the middle there, and since I was up here at the soundboard, he was introducing himself. He wore that completely black suit, looked like Johnny Cash, if you recall. He was, what you didn't know, and he's a successful businessman, obviously, but what you didn't know is that he was one of our former clients. So homeless, without anything, made himself into a very successful businessman. To this day, he's thankful and grateful for the little we could do for him. And he has agreed to, if anybody donates within the next 3 weeks to Helping Hands through Rotary, he's going to match that donation, that cash donation. So really good news. So everything you give is going to be double. And he said he was going to listen on Zoom, so hopefully he is. And, he's very happy to help. So hopefully that'll give you some incentive. So those of you who like to, shell out whatever you can, this is the time, whether it's a small amount, those of you with the deep pockets, 1,000, 7,000, 5,000, go. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, all right. Thank you all.
Thank you. Oh, and Brendan, 2 things. I hit hang up on the button. It was the IRS. Just kidding. But you do owe us $5 because your phone rang during the meeting. You can pay that to Greg Young forthwith. Speaking of our president, let's welcome him now to the podium, Greg Young.
All right, thank you, Tom. Wow, and that's very inspirational, man. Nice story. It's great to see everyone today. As I was preparing my notes for today, I didn't know I was going to be hit up for more announcements, but I have a few that I want to share because they're important. First, this one I did know about. Longtime Music Committee of One, Gordon Hubble. Gordon, raise your hand, please. You may know that every week he provides music as we come in and plays music if we're singing or other things related to our club activities. Gordon has been our pianist for as long as I've been in the club. So anyway, he is looking for someone to share in that entertainment aspect. So please see Gordon if you have any interest in being part-time co-chair on that committee and playing the piano, and you may have that talent that you want to shine and bring in. So check with Gordon, please. Wilbur, I don't know. You play piano? Okay. Bad guitar. Oh, air guitar probably. So also a few things that I want to make sure I do. Jan Legler, raise your hand, please. Jan, who helped us immensely, or helped me immensely this year by, many of you know, these tablecloths get cleaned by Rotarians every week. She took it on selfishly for many weeks, and now she's heading out to, is it Nebraska? I'm sorry? Nebraska, for half of the year where she spends time with her family, and her son is going to be the president of their club out there, so she's going to be part of that activity. So Jan, thanks for everything. Also, let me do this one. We have a few people graduating that I found out about 5 minutes ago. Wes and Marcy Eubank are proud to have their granddaughter Charlotte Latin graduating. Jason and Ginger Shank have their daughter Bria graduating from Buchholz, and Matthew and Shannon Ratty are having their son Dylan graduate from Santa Fe. So I know that's exciting time, one of the milestones in our lives. When you say, Star, the graduation from high school, we're not quite there at the retirement age yet, but we're working that way when we do. Ryan Thompson mentioned last week the Rotary Rebuilding Together project. Our crew will be working this Saturday, and if we complete it, we're done, but we have time for next Saturday as well. So keep your eyes out if we do that again. The project, I will give you a quick update. It's in Southeast Gainesville. It's installation of T111, siding, painting, installation of some various materials, screening on the back porch. It says all skill levels are welcome, which is what they try to do every year. The residents impacted, I found this very inspiring, so I'm going to read it. The homeowners, the Wearies, are beloved members of the Gainesville community, having called this city home their entire lives. Mr. Weary is a disabled veteran who served in the Army, and Mrs. Weary is a retired long-term ER nurse at Shands Hospital. And it goes on to say how much pride they take in their home, but they've gotten to an age where they can't do the maintenance themselves, and they have limited resources. So this is our way of helping to serve in the community that we live in. So I hope you can join us. Let me know if you'd like to. You can contact me or see me after the meeting. By the way, Ryan couldn't be here today because he and his wife, Crystal, welcomed a new member, baby boy, welcomed a new baby boy, Caden James Thompson, into the world this past Saturday. And I don't know if Ryan's watching online, but please congratulate Ryan and Crystal. All right, we have the troublemaker table over here that has people graduating from high school. I just found out Linda's son, Ethan, is graduating from Buchholz High School as well. So a lot of graduation happening in the air these days. Congratulations. Let's see, where are we? I think we're moving on here. One other announcement I want to make sure that I get to. Some of you may know that Kevin Thorpe, who often does our invocation on Zoom, has been a long-term member of our club. And he cannot attend the weekly meetings in person. He does those on Zoom. The reason why he can is he's in Jacksonville on Tuesdays. He shares care of his mother with his siblings, and she's living in the home, and he told me she's going to be 95 this year. And so Kevin is going to be celebrating his 25th year as a pastor, and I'd like to congratulate Kevin on that anniversary, and he's watching today. All right, a lot of announcements. Last week I mentioned the district is sending $5,000 of its own monies to South Sudan Healthcare Clinic organization, Jacob's organization that is serving over in South Sudan, the people of Juba. And there was also a $5,000 private match at the meeting, so that's $10,000 going. Our club will also be sending some monies, yet to be approved at the amount by the board, to the organization just mentioned, from our disaster relief fund in the foundation. We have some disaster relief funds that are ours for our club. If you would like to contribute as an individual as well, please contact me, let me know, and I will get the information to you how to do this. And also, I will be sending out an email later today to give you any information you need. You can reply to that email, and then that way we can connect. So at this time, I'd like to bring up today's speaker, Star Bradbury. Star is an aging life care specialist and CEO of Senior Living Strategies Consulting. Star is passionate in helping families develop a proactive plan that will allow them to make the most informed and educated decisions for their parents' well-being and their own. Her many years of experience in facilitating senior living allows Star to help families develop a comprehensive, proactive plan to aging successfully. Oh, and by the way, I often see Star at musical performances by my favorite local band, the Shambles. And yes, we have a Shambles fan here. Good. And her husband, Mitch, is in the band. He's a percussionist. So with that, please welcome Star Bradbury.
Well, hello, everybody, and thank you for having me. I have seen a few people today that I have not seen. I'm afraid to even say, but 20 years, 30 years, a few people that came up, it's like, I know we know each other. It's been a long time, so it's a pleasure to be here. I want to share with you, here it's coming. The secret to aging successfully. You'll be happy to know it is not Botox or plastic surgery, I'm happy to say. But how many of you have aging parents, relatives, or loved ones that you're concerned about or trying to plan for? Just raise your hand, I'm not going to call on you. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. The fastest growing demographic is 90 to 100. And I had a hunch, since I knew this was one of the oldest Rotary clubs, that I'd have a cross-section of people both aging themselves or with aging parents. And because I have friends whose parents, as we just heard, are 90, 95. So honestly, there's people in here who are aging in their 70s, late 60s, and also have parents still with them in their 90s, 95. So again, that is the fastest growing demographic. But here are some interesting facts. 3 in 10 Americans 40 plus would rather not think about getting old. I mean, that's probably a true statement, right? But there's consequences to that. And 77% of elders want to age in place. That means stay in your home, but they haven't made any modifications to make their home safer or more age-friendly. That comes along with, I think I just won't think about this. And if you're 65, you have a 70% chance of needing some kind of long-term care, and that's a figure straight off the .gov site about aging and aging statistics. You probably will never have me back, but I am passionate about talking about the reality of aging and the secret to aging successfully. We're going to get to that. So consider the facts. Here are some more facts. 73% of adult children have not discussed end-of-life issues with their parents. I mean, again, I'm not going to ask for people to raise hands on that question, but just stop and ask yourself. And by the way, I'd like to say it's a two-way conversation. Have you talked to your children about your end-of-life wishes? If you have aging parents, it's not too young. In my book, I say you can start talking with them. In fact, younger is better in their 60s. Don't wait. Don't wait to have a conversation later. And I really hope that everyone in this room has completed an advance directive. That's another presentation. So what if you or your loved one suddenly had to deal with any one of these health crises? Any one of these. I'm also positive that probably at least half the people in this room have dealt with something on that list themselves or with their aging parent or loved one. And remember, you can have parents who you've adopted, meaning family of choice as opposed to family of origin. There's many people who consider that they are willing to be caregivers to loved ones who are not necessarily their biological parents. But if someone you knew could no longer live alone, and having worked in assisted living facilities myself, I ran one, memory care facility, yep, ran that too. And then shout out to Okamic. I was at Okamic for 18 years plus. I had a lot of experience in watching what people did, decisions they make, what worked, what didn't work. And I also like to say, since my parents divorced and remarried, I had to deal with the death of all of those parents, and I got to see more about what did not work than what did work. So there's a lot of things that life can throw at us, curveballs, that we don't like to think about, but I'm sort of on the bandstand of trying to get you to think about what you could do to be a little more prepared and handle life's curveballs. I call this the perfect storm. because I've seen for so many years, my 25 years in senior living, the tendency to procrastinate, not look at this, not make a plan, not talk to your parents, or talk to your adult children, talk to your parents, or you talking to them, and then you wait for the crisis. And then what happens? We all know what happens when you're waiting for the crisis, because then you are reacting. You're not planning. You don't have a plan. You're reacting, and believe me, your options diminish considerably if you don't have a plan. You haven't at least thought some of these things through. So I'm dedicated to helping people make educated and informed decisions before a crisis. So that's what I want to stress. Initiating a conversation is a two-way street. If you have parents in their 60s, 70s, or 80s, sit down and talk to them. Ask them what their plan is. Mom, Dad, are you going to stay in your home? Or you should be asking yourself, is your home a good home to age up in? My house is 2.5 stories. All the bedrooms and bathrooms are upstairs. Not a good house, eventually, for me to stay in. And so those are the kinds of thinking you should be thinking. Yeah, I do want to stay in my house, but have I modified my house? Is it a house that's going to work for me? What if I couldn't go up the stairs at all? And I'm an old dancer, so I have both hips replaced, young. And, I'm thinking, is that going to work for me in the house I'm in now? And what's my plan? I have a plan. I don't have to share it right now, but I have a plan. So talk with your parents. And the biggest question I ask to people who say, I'm going to stay in my house, because that's sort of the default. I'm swimming upstream on this one, folks. The statistics of people who say, just going to stay in my house. You know what I say to them? That is not a plan. That's a statement. I'm staying in my house. Okay, great. But what have you done to make that house work for you as you get older? Is that a place that's going to can help you stay independent? And even more important, how is your support team? The only statistics that show aging in place works is directly related to how strong is your support system and how available are those people to really be there to help you, and your social connectedness score. How connected are you to your friends in your community? Those two things, research shows, are the strongest indicators of aging successfully, no matter where you are. So what does successful aging mean to you or your family? These are the things over my 25 years in senior living that I've heard the most. Staying in your home, yes, that will work if you've really thought it through and you've made a plan. Maintaining your health, safety, and independence, of course. That's really powerful and very strong point. Staying connected to community, being able to travel. So as you develop your own plan, I suggest you take a minute to actually sit down and write what your values are. What are your hopes and dreams? You know, we always talk about hopes and dreams when we're young, hopes and dreams when we retire. But what about post-retirement hopes and dreams? Well, you know, those are still real and exist. You can be 80 or 90 and still have hopes and dreams. So how do your values and your hopes and your dreams line up with the plan you're creating for yourself? So I'm going to talk about principle number 1, which I have in my book, which is very, very simple. And we're going to actually apply it a little bit so that you can kind of see how this works. Because I really, truly believe that the first question everyone should start with as they make any decision around this topic of aging successfully is this: how can I maximize and prolong my independence for the longest possible time? Now, as simple as that sounds, that's not how people think. I know that because I spent 25 years talking to people about their decisions about aging and where they want to live and where they should move to, and should I move closer to an adult child or to somebody else in the family who can be supportive. But most people just say, oh, I think I'll just stay in my home or age in place. But really, is that going to make you as independent and maximize your independence for the longest possible time? Well, it might or it might not. But if you start out with this question, every decision is asked against this framework of maximizing my independence for the longest possible time. You might come up with a very different set of answers for what it means to age successfully. So, and the one thing I like about this, how many of you can relate to the fact that families don't always agree? Yeah. And how many can you relate to the fact that families don't often agree when it comes to what mom and dad should do? I'm sure you've sat out here and your kids are telling you, what? You want to do what? Right? Or you telling your kids what you want to do, they're not happy, you're not happy, or especially the siblings don't agree. We think mom should move here. We think dad should move there. I don't think they should move. I don't have to go too much further. Everyone in here can relate to that, but everyone can agree on this principle. If you have parents who are saying, I don't need any help, just say, Mom, I think you want to be as independent as possible for the longest time. Is that right? Do you think they'll disagree? I don't think so. How can we make a plan together that's going to help you maximize your independence and stay independent? Whatever that means, I'll talk about what that means to you for the longest possible time. So the real questions to start with is, what decisions can I make with this goal in mind? If I move or modify my home, will this help me maintain my independence for longer? If I moved into a full-service retirement or life care community, will that help me maximize my independence? I spent many years talking to people about that as a possibility. And how strong is my support team? Can I build my support team? If you don't have a strong support team, that's a big question. I'm telling you that a few years ago, I found brand new doctor, accountant, attorney. Why? I wanted them to be around when I need them. I'm going to live to 95. And I saw what happened with my own parents' attorneys. They were dead, couldn't find the will. I mean, everything that could possibly have gone wrong, I've experienced. Seriously. I got a lot of stories. And so I thought, gosh, if I do live to 90 or 95, are these people going to even be around when I need them? So I found everybody in their 40s. And, there's no guarantee there, as we all know, but, it's a start. So you build your support team. Build your support team and find people who you think are available and willing to be there. So principle number 2, I call it just-in-time senior planning. How many of you are familiar with the just-in-time Japanese manufacturing concept from the 80s? Am I right about that, on the 80s? Yeah? Okay, well, that was sort of had to do with not having huge inventories and things going obsolete and out of date, right? And so you have this big plan, then you find out that the whole design of your machine changed, and now you've got $1 million worth of obsolete parts, right? So just-in-time was really revolutionary. I'm stealing that idea. Good ideas can get stolen, but it's not manufacturing, so I'm okay. I'm applying it to senior planning because in my experience, when I sit down with families, I see that they get overwhelmed. Mom just got diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Oh my God, what am I gonna do for the next 10, 20 years? Don't do that to yourself. Just try to plan for 3 to 5 years. Now, with the just-in-time manufacturing concept, there was also something called continuous improvement, right? You have a plan, but you're continually evaluating that. Is my plan still working? What could I modify or change? What isn't working because there's a new diagnosis or a new situation that's going to force me to change my plan? So I think you have to never say never. Do you know how many times I've heard people say, I am never going to leave my house? Really? Wait 5 years. Never say never. Try to teach yourself to be mentally flexible when it comes to making a plan to age successfully. My mother gave me a t-shirt. I didn't appreciate it. I'm sure you've heard of it. Growing old is not for sissies. I wish I still had it. I threw it out because I didn't fully appreciate when she gave it to me how true that statement is, right? So growing old is not for sissies. And if you're going to make it successfully, you've got to stay mentally flexible and be willing to change your mind. So applying the principles. Let's go through this a little quickly because I think it helps, and I do this in my book. How do you apply these principles to real life situations? Because that's where you'll see that they're helpful. So my own beloved stepfather, Bill, we always thought that he would pass away before my mom. He had so many health issues. But that was one of those curveballs, because that's not what happened. My mom died first, and they lived in Fort Lauderdale. That's a long drive. It's not like you could get in the car and see them on the weekends. And so I was so grateful when Bill agreed to move to Gainesville, because this was years ago, and I was still working full time and had responsibilities, and I couldn't pick up and just move to Fort Lauderdale. And he was willing, flexible now. It had been his home for 60 years. It's where his business was. But he was willing to be flexible, to move closer to me. Why? Because he understood that I was willing to be his advocate, his healthcare advocate. When he needed somebody, I would be the one that would go to the hospital, take him to the doctor, make sure that all of the care that he needed was provided, and I could oversee it. And I was more than willing to do that. So he was flexible. Think about it. If your kids are saying, won't you move closer to me? Are you maximizing your independence if you say no? If there comes a time where it really makes a difference in today's healthcare system to have an advocate and having somebody right there with you to be your liaison, and an educated and informed liaison. So story number 2. This is really interesting. I had a friend who thought that she was for life going to receive alimony from her husband from 30 years ago, right? But when he passed away, it stopped. That isn't what she thought was going to happen. And she was really on the margin financially. She needed that $600-700 a month to just make her bills. So we talked about it. Here's where mental flexibility comes in. Do you have an extra bedroom? Uh-huh. Do you have an extra bathroom? Uh-huh. Are you willing to get a roommate? And she said, I never even thought about it. I never thought about it. Turns out she's a retired nurse. She brought in called up the traveling nurses. She had nurses come into her home, and that made up more than the difference. And then if she wanted to stop, she just called them and said, I can't take any nurses now. Take me off the list of possible homes for nurses, and I'm going to go away for 2 or 3 months. But that made up the financial difference. Mental flexibility, willingness to change. Ellen and Tom, a couple I worked with who were trying to decide what to do. They had kids. And of course, what people used to say to me all the time, I don't have any kids, I'm a solo ager. While that is a bit of a challenge, you know what my answer is? Yeah, well, I have kids, but I'm not moving to LA, Chicago, or Massachusetts. You may have kids who are not able or capable or willing. And so that means you need to make a plan, but what's that plan going to be? I'm a huge fan of life care communities. There are 70 or 80 in Florida. There's many across the United States. Why? Because Ellen and Tom had taken care of their own parents. They knew what it meant to ask their kids to take care of them, and they didn't want to do that. So they chose a life care community where you're guaranteed access to long-term care, assisted living, memory care at a discounted rate. That's the 5-second speech that could take 2 hours to talk about. But it worked for them because it checked all the boxes to maximize their independence and not worry about where they were going to get care or being caregivers for each other. And then Max, a dear friend and client whose wife had Alzheimer's, he took care of her for years and years and years. And he was getting to the point where he was just completely exhausted. And I always remind caregivers, you're not going to be of any use to your loved one if you're in the hospital first or you die first. And he understood that to help her and himself, he did place her in a memory care facility. But that was actually going to maximize her independence and his, because she was cared for, wasn't going to wander, and he could get some sleep at night and see her as much as he could. So those are some tough, very different situations where you're applying the principle of maximizing your independence for the longest possible time and just-in-time senior planning. You'll be happy to know I'm not going to go into all of this. I'm sure my time is running out. But the 5 pillars of aging successfully that I sit down and talk with, and that I go through these categories with people, are the big question: do I want to age in place? Where do I want to be in the last 10, 20 years of my life. Should I stay in my home? Should I modify my home? Should I move closer to kids? And for those of you that are wondering about communities, go visit them. Just go visit them. You might be thinking, I'm going to move closer to my son in Boston. Go visit communities in Boston. Just because you move closer to one of your kids does not mean you have to live with them. I'll tell you a secret. The name of my book is Successfully Navigating Your Parents' Senior Years, but I almost called it, seriously, your parents don't want to live with you either. I love that title. I love that title. I thought it was great because it's true. I have been in senior living for 25 years, and you might love your kids, but that does not mean you want to live with them. I love my kids, but when I kind of think, Jake, no. Allison, she's got 2 kids, she's busy, you know, 1 and a 5-year-old. Let's see, Daniel, Massachusetts, I don't think so. Cold, cold winters. You know, I mean, just run through your list of options and try to figure out what's going to work, but you could live near them, right? Not with them. I also like the tiny house option, right? You could say, I'll pay to build the tiny house in your backyard on your 3 acres or whatever. You can rent it out now, and then when I need it, can I come? I mean, you can get creative. It doesn't always have to be a straight up, I stay in my house or I'm going to move to a retirement community. There's lots of ideas if you plan ahead and you know what kind of the direction you're going in. So do I age in place or am I going to move? And if so, where? Have I completed critical medical documents? Now I am going to put you all on the spot. How many of you have completed an advance directive? Please raise your hands. Oh, I'm so happy. Almost so happy. Wait. Keep your hands up. I'm looking. Oh, my goodness. Oh, I'm giving the dirty eyeball to a few people here. Do you all know how that important that is? Oh, my gosh. I don't care how young you are. Oh, you do? Good. Yay. A+. See? Look, this young man, you notice I say young man, he has one. All right, y'all should have your advance directives and healthcare surrogates and all of that paperwork in order and giving it to your doctor and giving it to your healthcare surrogate and make sure, when was the last time y'all looked at it? Is everybody on there in terms of your healthcare surrogate? Is that information correct? Y'all have a vial of life? Do you know what that is? Who knows what a vial of life is? I know we do at Okemah because we used to encourage everybody to have one. A vial of life, you can find that, just go online and say vial of life. It's actually a plastic tube that you keep in the freezer, and all the EMTs know to look for that if you have a little sign that says vial of life. And on that piece of information in the freezer, in a little plastic tube, are all of your current medications, all of your current emergency contact information. And you can get a little sticker that says vial of life, and they'll know when they're knocking down your door to look for that in the freezer. Okay, so the whole list of things under medical, beyond advanced directives and healthcare surrogates. Have I completed critical legal and financial documents? Well, I won't make you raise your hands, but based on the average age in this room, I sure hope you have a will, and I'm talking about a legal will now, or a trust, right? Or some indication of what you want to do with your assets and your property, because it is not fun. It's worse if you show up at the hospital without a living will, but it's also pretty unpleasant if you die without a will. I knew a gentleman who's very successful businessman. He'd remarried, and he had a terrible motorcycle accident and died. And it was a colossal mess. Children fighting, stepchildren fighting. I mean, it was a nightmare. I don't know what it would take to motivate you if you're sitting out here and you have not done a will. He also didn't have a succession plan for his business. His business completely fell apart. It was a mess. So, and I'm sure every one of you sitting here knows someone that actually happened to. So I'm really hoping that you all, especially as business people, I know many of you are, that you have thought about this and you have a succession plan and you have the paperwork that you need to ensure that you are not leaving a mess behind you. You're all concerned about legacy. What is your legacy? Well, that's the last one. I'm getting ahead of myself. So the other box here is, how will I pay for long-term care insurance? Okay, now I am going to put you on the spot again. I know you'll never have me back now. Okay, how many of you think Medicare pays for assisted living? Raise your hands. Did I give you a hint, maybe? Okay. Yeah, it does not. Yeah, it's a leading question. Never ask a question when you know the answer, right? But Medicare does not pay for assisted living. And assisted living, the average cost of assisted living is $5,000 to $6,000, and that's sort of what, let's call it the base price. Because if it's a facility that tiers up for services, just throw in another $1,000 to $2,000 on top of that, and that's true. And I'm going to give you the name of a website that's fabulous. It's called the Genworth Insurance, Genworth Long-Term Care Insurance. If you Google Genworth Cost of Care Survey, this is an well-known industry survey that's updated every 2 years, and you can go to the Genworth Cost of Care Survey, plug in your zip code, and they will tell you anywhere in the United States the average cost of home care, home health care, assisted living, and skilled nursing. And there's a drastic difference. Alaska is like twice what you might expect to pay in Florida if you can find it. And so that you can also, there's a little sliding scale. I want you to sit down if you do this, where you can fast forward into the future cost of long-term care and see what they think it's going to cost you in 2040. Today in Gainesville, skilled nursing for a semi-private room, and I have experts in the room, so I'm going to look at Andrew, and if you raise your eyebrow, like I'm right, okay? It's about $8,000 for a semi-private room and $13,000 a month private pay for a private room. Did y'all know that? $13,000 a month for a private room in skilled nursing. So when I add this to the 5 pillars of aging successfully, a big part of that is, how will I pay for long-term care? Any good financial planner out here should be saying, well, since the demographics are showing that the fastest growing group is 90 to 100, they're not, if you're only planning for 80, there's good news and bad news. That's not long enough. So you really need to look at, how am I going to pay for long-term care? And by the way, if you are paying for long-term care 24/7 in your home, it's more than $13,000 a month. So these are some pretty big numbers, and you can't go out and get long-term care insurance when you're 70. I don't advise that. Well, a standard kind of policy. But there are a lot of ways to approach this realistically, to think about what's going to work for me and my family and my parents. And what is my passion, purpose, and legacy? Because in my experience, the people that age successfully, there's a reason they're getting up every day. There's something that's pushing them that they're committed to in terms of giving back. There's an inner motivation, and still have a love of life. One of my best friends is 93, and she could work me under the table. And she's on so many committees. She's such a leader. There's a lot of mentors out there if you look for them, going strong in their 80s and 90s. And so you kind of have to decide, that's the older person you want to be. I realized that you don't just grow into a nice, sweet little old lady. You got to work at it. You have to make up your mind, that is the person you are going to become. There's a lot of things that can get in the way of that, right? Like how much your back hurts every morning, or whatever, that you lost your spouse, or that you're dealing with whatever life is throwing at you. So I believe it's a discipline and a faith as well. There's for me, a faith element of that. Did it go away? So yeah, I think that if you're going to age successfully, you've got to think about what is your passion, what is your legacy, how can you give back, because that's going to sustain you. And you know, I thought about after I did this, I said, you know, I didn't say anything about exercise, and I won't. But okay, that's a given. Okay, we'll just say that that's a given. We'll have Judy back to talk about the importance of exercise and health. Okay, so. You've got to ask yourself educated questions. And the time to do this is long, long before a crisis, either with your parents or with yourself and with your kids, and not just, you know, put your head in the ground and pretend that you're not going to get older. You know, growing older is a privilege denied many, right? Supposedly attributed to Mark Twain. It kind of sounds like him. Okay, but growing older is a privilege denied many. And so if you want to age well, you got to ask yourself educated questions. If I couldn't drive, what is my backup plan? I tell everybody, you better learn how to use Uber or Lyft. Don't wait till you need to do it. And I'm not joking. If you've never used it, and you don't have a ride and your support system ain't there for you, and you need a ride, download Uber, call an Uber driver, figure out how to use it before you have to use it. I mean, you just have to, again, be kind of flexible, be willing, or move to a community that's going to provide all the transportation you need. So what plan checks the most boxes? Let's back to principle number one. What will keep me independent for the longest possible time? Am I willing to trade off that big, beautiful house out in the middle of nowhere? I might love it, but is that going to keep me independent? One of my clients lives in like 10 acres, beautiful house, lost his wife 7 years ago. The man is lonely, very, very lonely and isolated. He has all the money in the world. That doesn't mean that he's connected to community. That doesn't mean he has a support system. That's not a good plan to age successfully. So you can see where this is going. You got to ask yourself some pretty hard questions. And money isn't always the answer because, as I said, I've seen many, many people isolated and lonely, especially when I had to do assessments for assisted living. People lived in one little room and one little other room in a 5-bedroom house. They didn't even use the rest of their house. So ask yourself if aging in place is a plan, or is that home going to isolate you more? So let's see. I'm wrapping it up here. Have more than one plan. Don't be afraid to ask for help. And you got to expect curveballs. Life never goes the way you plan. I said I would never live in Florida. I was also about 18, I think, when I said that. It's a lot of time has passed. And I love Gainesville. It's my home. I moved here in 1978. So I love Gainesville. I love this part of Florida. I'm not moving to LA, Chicago, or Massachusetts, but I have a plan. So get on wait list. Just because you get on a wait list doesn't mean you're going. I used to tell people all the time, if you're some of these communities, and you know, I'm just going to say it right now. At Okamic, if you wanted one or two of those particular kinds of floor plans, you're going to wait 5 or 6 years, and that hasn't changed. Am I right about that? Mostly. Okay. So, you know, just because you get on a wait list doesn't mean you've made a decision. It's just an option. And that would be true for any other retirement communities you might be considering near your kids in some other state. I knew one couple who had wait list deposits on 5 communities in 5 different states because they said, well, we don't know what we're going to do. We're not going to move for 5 or 6 years. We want our options open. Now, they were Uber planners, right? Type A, serious planners who wanted to have lots of options. So I like to call myself a realistic optimist. I am an optimist, but I'm a realistic optimist. And I want to have the chance to plan to live a long time successfully. I love this quote. Long-term planning is not about making long-term decisions. It is understanding the consequences of today's decisions on your future you. You have to plan for this, because if you wait, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. but that also applies to aging successfully. So I would like to encourage you to think about your decisions today and how they're going to affect your life in the future. That's my website. And my book is now available on all major book sites. And again, it's written for anyone helping their parents or an older loved one, but you can read it for yourself, give it to all your kids, and then have a discussion about it. So thank you for having me, and I'm happy to be here.
I'll take that. Will you come on up with me? Wow, Star, you've given us a lot to think about. You know, it reminds me of when my mother said, oh, the will's in the top drawer of the file cabinet in the bedroom. And I said, can I take a look at it? Yeah. Well, it was not anything legal. It was something off of online or something. But anyway, so there's a lot to do, a lot of planning, and got us thinking about it. So thank you so much. I want to, first off, give you this certificate. It shows that our club is giving a donation in your name to the Cade Museum Fund for at-risk kids to attend the Cade Museum. Thank you. And I think, thank you so much. Yes. All right. I want to thank everyone for attending today and being here. We had a full house today. This looks good. We hope to see you and your guests here next week when we will be having John Gregory will host the Youth Science Fair winners. So that's always a very interesting program. It makes us all feel inadequate as adults. So I want to thank everyone for cleaning their own tables last week. That was great. If you could continue that tradition, it makes things better. I'm sure Linda will like that in about 5 weeks when she's president. So, quote, age is simply the number of years the world has been enjoying you, unknown. And the ticket number, where did I put that ticket? Last 3 digits, 563, 563. With that, we're adjourned.